wonderful. We have almost 400 participants so far, and it's building towards the 1,400 who are registered. So welcome to everyone, and particularly, as I said, to the First Nations people of Australia, their elders past and present, and particular welcome to anyone of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander descent who is on today's webinar. Particular welcome to you. As Talini indicated, of course, we're here to launch the report, the digitalisation of design and construction of Class 2 buildings in New South Wales. And the launch is proudly hosted by our Centre for Smart Modern Construction at Western Sydney University and the Office of the New South Wales Building Commissioner. And you'll hear more from the Building Commissioner in a little while. I'd like to begin by acknowledging our distinguished guests who are here with us and who will be speaking today. Our guest speakers, in particular, the Honourable Kevin Anderson MP, who's the New South Wales Minister for Better Regulation and Innovation, and the Honourable Damien Tudhope MLC, who is the New South Wales Minister for Finance and Small Business. So welcome to both our ministers. Professor David Chandler, of course, OAM, who is the New South Wales Building Commissioner, doing a great job here in New South Wales in that role. I'd also like to acknowledge Stephen Forby, the Managing Director of TAFE New South Wales, who's online with us today. And from Western Sydney University, I'd like to acknowledge Professor Mike Kagioglu, who is the Dean of our School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment, and also Pro-Vice Chancellor Global Development for the UK and Europe for Western Sydney University, and Professor Srinath Perera, who is the Director of the Centre for Smart Modern Construction and one of the authors, one of the chief investigators of the report we're launching today. As I said, welcoming, we hope, over 1,000 people during the course of today's webinar. Now, it's increasingly important, of course, for all of us to be focused on developing sustainable and innovative solutions to industry and societal challenges, while at the same time, as we attempt to tackle the challenges in industry and society, we need to navigate and engage with the digital environment. It's pervasive, it impacts on all that we're doing, it makes a huge difference to our lives. But in a time of disruption and transformation, it's important that we engage with it to get the most effective outcomes. And in the COVID context, during this COVID pandemic, that's even more critical. We're in a transformative period. In fact, in some ways, a transitional period as we come out of one phase of the COVID pandemic through to what will probably be an endemic COVID context for the world to operate in into the future. And we need to be able to adapt through that transformation. And we need to find ways, in particular, to address all of these challenges I referred to, but to do it in collaboration. And this is very important for industry, for universities, and for government to find new ways to collaborate together. This is a very strong theme of our Commonwealth government and a whole range of incentives and schemes that the Commonwealth are putting in place to encourage collaboration with universities and industry and government. And of course, the state government here in New South Wales strongly driving collaboration between university and industry. Universities, of course, play a critical role: consultation expertise, research expertise, and of course, the ability to deliver on very important projects for government and industry. Today's report, the digitalisation of design and construction of Class 2 buildings in New South Wales, demonstrates a very effective collaboration between education, higher education in this case, and industry. And we're proud of the university's extensive and wide contribution to industry and communities through the development and the transfer of knowledge to obtain meaningful impact from the work that we're doing. And this report, I believe, and we'll hear more from the experts, of course, over the course of this webinar, I believe is going to be a very impactful report for the construction sector. The report itself, of course, provides findings from research into the state of digitalisation of the Class 2 multi-unit building sector in the New South Wales construction industry. It was funded exclusively by the Office of the New South Wales Building Commissioner. The research involved extensive literature reviews to understand the context from the literature, primary research, of course, surveys, quantitative analysis, as well as qualitative interviews with a range of industry and government participants. So a very comprehensive data set has been extracted from industry and government as a result of this project. The Centre for the Study of Centre for Smart Modern Construction led the research, and I want to pay tribute to the chief investigators, Professor Srinath Perera and Associate Professor Sean Jin, and of course supported by researchers Kasun, Gunasekara, and of course Marini, Samaratunga. So thank you to all of those researchers, and congratulations from me to Professor Perera in particular and his team for the contributions they've made and continue to make in our Centre for Smart Modern Construction. Now, the report proposes a new strategic framework for the digitalisation of design and construction, aiming to enhance industry capability and facilitate practical, effective alignment with the Design and Building Practitioners Act 2020 requirements. So a very, very focused objective for the report. The research findings in the report provides a significant contribution to the New South Wales construction sector. Now, a little bit more about our Centre for Smart Modern Construction, established only literally 4 years ago as a unique collaborative research centre, but playing a key role in connecting industry to university. Very pleased that Professor David Chandler, OAM, the New South Wales Building Commissioner, was instrumental in the establishment alongside Professor Srinath Perera from Western Sydney University at the time in August of 2017 when we set this up. And great that David was able to support the establishment of the centre. And it contributes to the development of a smart modern construction industry capable of solving 21st century challenges using concepts and technologies brought forward by the fourth industrial revolution. So making sure we're connected in to that very digitised world, artificial intelligence, robotics, and all the things that are transforming our lives. The centre and its work, of course, strongly and very proudly aligns with the university's new strategic plan, Sustaining Success, our 2021 to 2026 strategic plan, in which we are committed to ensuring that our research will have impact and that our communities will thrive. That's key to our mission, and embodying the principles of sustainability, transformation, connectedness, and excellence. All of those principles very much reflected in the work of the Centre for Smart Modern Construction. Now, we're involved in a range of initiatives through the centre for our region, for the Western Sydney region. There is no region possibly in the world, but certainly in Australia, that's going through as much change and investment from government in major infrastructure projects. But we're working alongside the Office of the New South Wales Building Commissioner. We're very closely aligned with the work that's happening at the Aerotropolis beside the Western Sydney Nancy Bird Walton International Airport, a key infrastructure project of the state and federal government, and Western Sydney University working very closely with other universities, UNSW, the University of Newcastle, the University of Wollongong, in our multiversity concept at the new airport. And of course, working very closely with TAFE New South Wales in establishing an Institute of Applied Technology focused on construction at our Penrith campus alongside TAFE New South Wales. TAFE New South Wales creating their construction hub. We're looking forward to working with them. And I know David and the team would be very pleased to see this major investment by the state government in the infrastructure and the capability for a focus on 21st century construction technology in Penrith. So a range of very exciting initiatives underway with the university, with TAFE New South Wales and with industry. Now, I just wanted to mention sustainability's come up a couple of times in my brief presentation. It's core to our new strategic plan at Western Sydney University, and we're very pleased to be very closely associated with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And that's been reflected in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings over the last 2 years, involving almost 1,000 universities around the world. We're ranked number 17 in the world overall, from over 1,200 universities, in fact, for our social, ecological and economic impact. And we're 6th in Australia. We're 3rd worldwide for the work we're doing on gender equality. We're 4th in the world for reducing the work we're doing on reducing inequality. We're equal 5th for the partnerships we're forging in relation to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we're 10th in the world for responsible consumption and production. So we're very, very proud, alongside of being number 17 in the world, for our work on climate action. So it's a remarkable achievement for a university as young as Western Sydney University. So with industry and government working together, we're playing a critical role in supporting the development of local, regional and national economies and solutions to our problems, highlighted, I think, by this report. So once again, welcome. It's great to have everyone here. We have over 500 participants at the moment. I'm looking forward to the contribution of our guest speakers, including our two ministers, the Honourable Kevin Anderson and the Honourable Damien Tudhope. And I want to thank again the Office of the New South Wales Building Commissioner and Professor David Chandler, OAM, for the great work that they're doing, so critically important to this industry sector. Thank you so much for coming and celebrating the launch of this report today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Next, I cordially invite Professor Mike Caglioglu, the Dean of the School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment of Western Sydney University, to address the gathering. The virtual stage is yours, Professor.
Thank you very much, Stalini, and thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor, for this wonderful introduction. I would also like to acknowledge our distinguished guests, the Honourable Kevin Anderson, MP, Honourable Damien Tudhope, MP, Stephen Forby, Adjunct Professor David Chandler, and Professor Srinath Perera, and ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, collaborators, and many partners. It is my great pleasure to address this event, which is concerned with the launch of the report, as the Vice-Chancellor has just mentioned. As the Dean of the School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment, I'm immensely proud of the work that the school is undertaking across the whole spectrum of the various disciplines it serves, and in collaboration with other disciplines across the university. Indeed, there's no one discipline that can claim to have all the answers to the complexity of the issues involved in delivering today's built and human environments. And it is this complexity that is forcing us to take a more holistic approach to any issues we're investigating, often dealing with physical and digital systems on the tools versus advanced technology solutions, human judgment compared to artificial intelligence generated indicators, sustainable versus unsustainable materials, the construction, the operating and decommissioning approaches, and everything that's involved there. And it is within this context that we've identified across the school 3 broad and interconnected themes for our work. These are the digitalization approaches, the industrialization of the sectors, and also the sustainability and intelligent resilience, as the Vice-Chancellor has mentioned, plays a very key part in the work that we do. And those themes, they manifest themselves in relation to new materials such as nanocomposites, synthetic materials, robotic systems, advanced manufacturing 4.0, factories of the future, water treatment and water quality systems, geotechnical innovations, biomedical engineering solutions, and many, many more. And that allows us as a university to be on the one hand, address aspects of designing our urban infrastructure through our university themes, and the architecture work, but also, and perhaps uniquely for our school, it addresses all the aspects of the production of the built environments, from infrastructure systems to supply chains, contracts and legal issues management, and so on. And the flagship centers in our school include the Center for Infrastructure Engineering, and of course, our very own Center for Smart Modern Construction, who undertook the research reported in the report launched today. And I encourage you to explore all the innovations we have produced and look at the relevance of your work. Reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to work with you on any aspects you require. What I would also like to stress is that all of the work that we do, both in teaching and in research, is with the involvement of industry. We have significant partnerships with a broad range in the construction sector. And we ensure that our work is not only scientifically robust, which of course is expected, and world leading, but also provides a direct input to today's practices through a virtuous knowledge exchange process, from knowledge production to its use and vice versa, learning very much from practice at the same time that we influence it. And indeed, those partnerships have been the bedrock of the establishment of the Center for Smart Modern Construction, as the Vice-Chancellor has mentioned, and it has allowed us to be world leading. Led by Professor Srinath Perera as the founding director, and with the great influence of David Chandler, was established as an industry collaborative center in 2017, and is a unique research center with a prime focus of engaging industry, developing the construction industry, and its research and education platforms. They have many achievements on the books, and the work that they do is significant, but they do that in collaboration via roundtables, industry forums, conferences, publications, and international presentations. And the influence of the center has been recognized both regionally, nationally, and internationally. And the researchers, they've been leading work in blockchain applications in construction, and now they're considered to be leaders in this space worldwide. Also, significant work is taking place in offsite construction, modular and prefabrication, sustainability and carbon management, construction performance, organization maturity, building information modeling, and many more, having generated significant funds over the last few years and more than 200 publications in very high quality journals, but also influential industry report. And what is also critical, the Vice Chancellor has mentioned, is the work that we do together with government and for government and NGO organizations, informing decision-making, undertaking world-leading research, develop evidence, and investigate thoroughly, often very complicated and complex issues. We've been fortunate in our collaboration with the Office of the Building Commissioner and the Building Commissioner himself, David Chandler. We've also been able to address a very broad and complex agenda together, bringing to bear world-leading research organizations from across the globe, just to make sure that the issues addressed within the locality of New South Wales have the potential to become global beacons of innovation. It is this relevance of the work that we do that's also allowed us to develop very high quality programs of significant potential for the sector. A Masters of Project Management course has successfully been running now for 3 years with 2 cohorts graduating, again fully employed. We have a suite of postgraduate programs in construction law, including graduate certificates, short courses, a diploma, and a master's in construction law that will be starting in autumn of 2022, providing an opportunity for industry participants to qualify locally here in New South Wales in delivering better contract administration services. We're also in the process of developing an industry construction professional doctorate program with the Office of the Building Commissioner and with other universities. In addition to this, we've developed the Bachelor's of Advanced Construction Management program as an industry collaborative, co-delivered with industry program, as an addition to the already successful and the largest program of construction management in the whole of Australia and possibly the world. And this report launched here today is a demonstration of a capability of working with government and industry in an unbiased way, producing outputs relevant to the industry at the highest level. I'd like to congratulate Professor Perera and the whole team involved in producing the report for the excellent work. Finally, I would like to thank the Building Commissioner, David Chandler, and the Office of the Building Commissioner in New South Wales. A big thank you to all the industry collaborators and everyone that participated in the work across the sector. I do hope that you find the results of the survey insightful and hear the call for action that is required to bring about significant and much needed changes in our sector. At the university and at the School of Engineering, Design and Built Environment, we stand ready to deliver our mission of impactful research and collaborate with interested parties in industry and government in realizing our mission. Thank you very much, and I hope you do enjoy the launch. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It is my pleasure to welcome the Honourable Kevin Anderson MP, Minister for Better Regulation and Innovation, to address the gathering. Over to you, Minister Anderson.
Well, good morning, Marini, and thank you very much. And I'd like to acknowledge Vice-Chancellor Professor Barney Glover, and I welcome the opportunity to update everyone on the importance of government's academic and industry collaboration for this project. I'd also like to acknowledge the new Dean of the School of Engineering, Professor Mike Caglioglu, who's waiting in London just before moving to take out his role here shortly. And I'm aware the new Dean has been waiting nearly a year as a result of COVID-19. And we look forward to welcoming you, Professor, very soon. There's been an amazing interest in this research locally and internationally, and I'm advised we've received over 1,380 registrations for today's launch. And I also would like to acknowledge my colleague, Minister for Small Business, Damien Tudor-Hope, who joins us online from the New South Wales Government as well. This COVID pandemic has highlighted something that we've known for quite some time, the importance of digitisation. And we've seen digitisation rapidly become more entrenched in our everyday lives, and the New South Wales government's leading the charge across the board when it comes to this space. Digitisation is so important to every industry today. Here in New South Wales, it's central to everything that we're doing to be a smarter, more efficient state. We are striving to understand where the digital capabilities of construction are at, so we can be aware of the barriers and enablers, more importantly, to growing its capabilities further. Thanks to this report, we now have the baseline that we can build on. It's important that policymakers take industry capability and they take that into account when implementing regulation, especially the capabilities of small business. And we'll hear more from Minister Tudorhope very shortly. This report provides independent analysis that everyone can benefit from. When putting this report together, we had over 540 complete responses with a statistical validity of plus 95%, which gives me great confidence that we are on the right track. We believe this report is the first project of its type and emphasises the importance of digital and innovation as a centrepiece of a modern construction industry. This builds on the work we're doing across the board in the construction sector with innovations such as the Building Assurance Solution, and we name it the BAS. And that BAS is a vital industry capability to enable consumers and insurers to see the level of trustworthiness of buildings that they may be considering purchasing. At the end of the day, it is the great Australian dream of every mum and dad and every Australian to own their own home. We have plenty more exciting updates to come in this space, and I look forward to updating you as the New South Wales government continues on our mission to restore public confidence in the New South Wales construction sector and make it the #1 destination for safety and investment. Safety of residential apartment buildings is our #1 agenda, which is why we introduced the Design and Building Practitioners Act 2020. This new legislation was designed to reform and enhance the regulation of Class 2 buildings in New South Wales. And what that does, it has a particular focus on declared designs and as-built drawings. We're requiring this declaration to be in a digital format. It's groundbreaking stuff. Digitising the New South Wales building industry and moving away from analogue record keeping has high potential to deliver substantial public benefits through increased regulatory efficiency and improved industry productivity. Digital platforms such as the New South Wales Planning Portal and the Strata Hub are creating an end-to-end record of buildings across their life, a fingerprint, a DNA of that building, if you will, through planning, construction, occupation, and maintenance. This will give us a single source of truth that will stay with the building. This is particularly important in a post-COVID era, enabling remote service delivery and efficient management of building design and procurement. With the digitalisation of the construction industry well underway, designers and builders need to become digital ready in order to successfully navigate this new digital environment. It's an opportunity to envisage the capabilities that the construction industry of the future needs to acquire. Once again, I thank you, and thanks to everyone involved in putting this report together, and thank you for your work you're doing in helping to lead this digital revolution, which will contribute so significantly to achieving our aim of developing a safer, stronger, and more transparent construction industry here in New South Wales. It's been an honour and a pleasure to be with you today. All the best.
Thank you, Minister Anderson. The Honourable Damien Tudorhope MP, Minister for Finance and Small Business, is also with us today. I cordially invite Minister Tudorhope to address the gathering.
Good morning, and it's great to be with you all this morning, and I'm delighted that 1,400 people have participated in this, the launch of this report, and it shows the level of interest that exists in respect of the progress which is being made in relation to the digitalisation of the construction industry. I'd like to thank the University of Western Sydney for doing the research and for putting on this event this morning. Some of the best builders in Sydney have their qualifications from the University of Western Sydney, and I'm sure many of them are watching this morning and participating in this program. I'd like to also thank my colleague Kevin Anderson for the address that he's just given and the work that he's done in revolutionising the building industry and the accountability of the building industry. And in that regard, you can't go past also the work that David Chandler, the Building Commissioner, has done to work with government in delivering a building industry which is delivering for all of us. If I go to this report, the thing that really strikes me in relation to it is, and it's the first place that I would go, is how relevant is it to small business? Well, this is a report relating to the digitisation of the construction industry for Class 2 buildings. 95% of those buildings are constructed by micro or small businesses. So if there are people who are watching this morning, this is about you if you are a small business. And one of the things that I say is that we want small business to succeed in this state. And I want to say a few things about that. The first thing I'd like to say is a big thank you to the construction industry for the participation that they have engaged in for making sure that the construction industry and many of the people working in the construction industry are vaccinated. Might seem a small thing at the moment, but the return of business in New South Wales is predicated on a vaccination return rate of between 70 and 80%. And I can't speak highly enough of those in the construction industry who have engaged in making sure that their employees are vaccinated and that they themselves are vaccinated and participating in the reopening of Sydney businesses, Sydney and New South Wales businesses. In my former life, I was a lawyer, and surprisingly enough, I did a lot of construction litigation. And one of the great bugbears, of course, was circumstances where there were disputes relating to whether it was a building defect caused by the builder or whether the design was wrong. Generally, the plans were never available, and there was just a plethora of litigation, which was very, very costly for the participants in that litigation, which related to building defects. One of the things that the Building Commissioner has been absolutely focused on is trying to make sure that the building industry is accountable. What we really have understood and what this government has understood is that we owe an obligation to the consumers of building products to make sure that they are fit for purpose and that the people who are involved in the industry are always accountable to the consumers who are the end users of their products. Digitisation has been a key area in terms of delivering regulatory reform for the building industry. We now expect, as part of those regulations, an end-to-end product, as the Minister so capably elucidated, from the time that we lodge plans through planning portals to the final product, which is available for consumers to see for the life of the project, being available in a digital manner. Now, there are lots of ways we can respond to that. This report is fantastic in what it analyses in terms of how the industry has responded. There is obviously the cohort who thinks that digitisation is only about transferring an analogue file to a PDF file. Well, there is a huge opportunity to progress that level of digitisation. And some things that we ought to concentrate on are the startups which are working with the construction industry to develop products which enhance the work which was done by builders in delivering the as-built plans, by the designers, by the engineers, so that there is this seamless product. And we ought to be focused on how we support startup companies for the purposes of their contribution to the digitisation of the building industry. The second, and in many respects, I think the most important component for many of the people online this morning is this. Our experience is that those companies which enhance their digitisation capability generally become more profitable. Now, people often take the view to buy a particular or invest in a new digital platform is too costly. Generally, and I have had lots of seminars in relation to the digitisation of small businesses, there is an absolute correlation between a small business's profitability and its embracing of digitisation and enhanced digitisation platforms. As you embrace that world, the opportunity for you to expand and for your small business to become a big business exponentially increases. So the work we're being done is really in the interests of every small business who is a builder. I mean, there are so many tradies, so many builders who are small businesses. I urge you to take on board the content and the research which has been done, embrace startups, embrace digitisation, seek to find ways which you can enhance the products which you are making available. But most importantly, for the consumers of New South Wales, the building industry is enhanced by the quality of the work that you do and the accountability that you have for that work. So I thank you for all those involved in this project. I think the work is fantastic. It is the starting point, though, for the industry going down this path, which is being so ably led by the Minister and David Chandler and I thank the university for also participating in this work. So thank you for having me here this morning, and I congratulate those who have been involved in this project for the work which they have done.
Thank you, Minister Chitterhope. I now have the pleasure of welcoming Adjunct Professor David Chandler, OAM, the New South Wales Building Commissioner, to address the gathering. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you all, and for the preceding speakers, Vice Chancellor, we've been working with this centre for must be nearly 5 or 6 years now, and Mike, I'm looking forward to having you in Australia, which is really going to be a real uplift to the work we're doing. Both our ministers emphasised to you how important this work is, and don't think for a minute that this isn't very important work. And Vice Chancellor kindly called out Stefan Fabry, who's the CEO of TAFE New South Wales, and just how thrilled I am to see their new facility being built right alongside Western Sydney University to create really a construction precinct of a world-class stature and scale. So all of these things are moving in the right direction, and really the light is shining on us as an industry to really lift. So look, this presentation today is really part of the work we're doing through the Construct New South Wales Reform Program, and in particular Pillar 6. Pillar 6 is about the need to have evidence-based knowledge to underpin decision making and to make sure that we move away from making decisions and policy based on opinion. And it's been very interesting that over the last year, something that was seen to be sort of a nice to have has suddenly become centre stage of the work that is being done in the work that we're doing at the Office of Building Commissioner. And the other piece that perhaps started with a view that it was also a nice to have was the Pillar 3, which is the lifting skills and capabilities piece, where we've put a substantial investment into that, but so has the industry. We have got across these working groups nearly 200 industry people working to guide each of the pieces of work that form the basis of Construct New South Wales. So Pillar 3 has an excellent bunch of industry and academic collaborators working to deliver these skills, and we've been really privileged to be using the TAFE platform. It is an absolutely outstanding and world-class product, and I can tell you that everybody who is doing the modules that we've been developing. A couple of the modules have been developed by Western Sydney University. There's a current module being developed down at Wollongong University, and we've got many others in the pipeline. So this has really become a very fast to market type education tool. And Pillar 3, I think, will be one of the legacy pieces of the Construct New South Wales strategy in New South Wales. As I mentioned earlier when I was talking to the Vice-Chancellor before we started this session today, is that as we progress through the work we're doing in the reform area, we are building a very, very substantial data lake. That data lake is comprised of, at this stage, over 100 projects that we have gone into during the reform process. We've called in all of the contracts. We've called in all of the design documents. We've called in all of the records of the performance of the work. We've called in all of the certifications of the work. We have built a huge data lake that's been able to inform us as we stand up the work progressively. But the legacy piece of that's got to be that somebody writes this stuff up so that it actually can become meaningfully embedded in those organisations that want to take that knowledge with them. So I'm very pleased to advise that we're in the final stages of agreeing the framework for a industry doctorate, and that is a doctorate which would enable people in industry to end up with exclusive access through university protocols, through their research protocols, to enable them to go into this data lake of huge proportion that we have built to actually take off pieces out of that data lake that are thematically organised in a way that can provide the rigorous insights and knowledge transfer that we have that we hope for this project, that we're using this one-time reform effort, that we should make sure that we've got a very, very powerful piece of work left. The importance of the work we're doing is also facing into the fact that a modern regulator needs to look beyond its own jurisdiction to be effective. It's just simply not possible to regard buildings as being made in a single place. They're being made in places from all over the world. So the global construction ecosystem is extended. It is everywhere. It is digitally connected, and every single building has its roots in somewhere around the world. So as we move forward, this digitization piece that we're doing is already standing up in other parts of our work. We've got a blockchain project at the moment around the building assurance solution, which is looking at the trustworthiness of buildings when they're finished. It's a very important piece for insurers to renew their appetite to come back and take on the risks of this industry. So you'll hear more about those pieces. We've also got a number of other pieces of research being performed. We'll be producing a report very shortly in our work looking into over 500 Class 2 buildings that have been completed in the last 6 years, to understand their defects, to understand what the cause of those defects were, such that we can provide information to the industry about what was the root cause. All of these things are very important building blocks to standing up the Design and Building Practitioners Act that has just recently started in New South Wales. It started on the 1st of July this year. This is a transformative piece of legislation. It's unlike any legislation in Australia, and it will be world leading when people see the relationship between how practically the legislation aligns with the way the industry delivers projects, and how we can build in that level of accountability that has never been available to anybody, particularly consumers, in the past. And Minister Tudorhope has made that clear in understanding just simply the productivity implications of poor consumers having to face into extraordinary journeys through the courts at great expense and great frustration. We're hoping that, in fact, the way that we can smooth out the flow of data through a digital capability is going to just simply make everybody more efficient in the first instance and more accountable as we come to the back end. So look, let me just make a final shout out, because I I do want to acknowledge the fact that I did spend 3 years out at Western Sydney University. I'd call it my sabbatical, but it was a learning place for me. I spent 3 years mixing with academics, mixing with young students, and really having an opportunity to talk to a wide sector of the industry without any conflicts of interest, just to simply be there as a pseudo-academic in a way, and to indulge in the fact that it was an important time. So it has taught me one thing, and that is that we shouldn't have industry people doing 30 and 40 years of their career without them having a refresher immersion in some form of education experience. Because if you think you know everything you know today is going to serve you for the next 20 to 30 years of your professional life, you are dreaming. And you really do need to think about going back and doing a master's, going back and doing a doctorate, but making sure you stay at the cutting edge of knowledge, because you can always squirrel your own views of the world away in a very small framework, but you need to stretch them. And the only place to do that, I believe, is in an academic experience. And it doesn't matter whether it's vocational or it's in a higher education space. So a big call out to Western Sydney University. I have benefited from my relationship there over the last 5 or 6 years. And I'm hoping that Srinath, you can now take us through a piece of work that you've done. And hopefully that will, hopefully this report will actually be something that goes to work tomorrow. Thank you for having me along.
Thank you, Building Commissioner. Next, I cordially invite Professor Srinath Perera, the Director of the Centre for Smart Modern Construction, to officially launch the report on digitalization of design and construction of Class 2 buildings in New South Wales, and to present the findings of the report. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Tilini. And Vice Chancellor, Honourable Ministers, Building Commissioner David Chandler, Dean Professor Mike Kagiadlu, panel members and participants, good morning, everyone. It is good to present the findings of our research into the state of digitalization of the construction sector of New South Wales. In this project, we aimed at understanding the current state of digitalization in New South Wales, especially with respect to Class 2 buildings. Then we used the knowledge to develop a framework for digitalization. I will first explain the process followed and contextualize the survey carried out, and then discuss the result and the proposed framework coming out of it. We adopted a detailed, rigorous methodology involving a detailed literature review, interviews of design practitioners, building practitioners, builders, software vendors. We interviewed them to first understand the context and issues related to, and then prepared our online survey, and then used that online survey to come up with our findings. But these findings were then subsequently verified through the interview of these three parties that I mentioned again, and then we finally came up with our report. As previously mentioned by some speakers, this basically shows the survey population and people involved in responding to the survey. The survey population included simply designers and builders. The survey was obtained views of organizations as opposed to views of individuals. So we didn't look at individual views, but we looked at organizational views. Therefore, one survey per organization, how we distributed it. We got 542 responses, and in overall sense, we got 95% confidence limits in the survey findings. Now, looking at the data, it is clear that most, 81% in fact, designers and builders are organized as companies, which is a positive thing. The most interesting to note is the composition of organizations by size. We see that 54% of designers and builders are classified as micro-level organizations employing less than 4 people. 95% of all organizations are in the category of micro SME, and only 5% are large organizations. This provides a clear indication of the true profile of the construction sector. It is predominantly micro SME-led sector. The survey sample indicated a wealth of experience in designing and constructing Class 2 buildings. 61% majority had over 10 years experience, as you can see here in these graphs. Looking at the average annual turnover in the last 3 years of these companies who responded, 2/3 of designers fall into the category of 1 million in annual turnover. 40% of builders turnover is under 52 million. It further confirms that majority are small builders and designers. We then analyzed what design services are offered and whether they are in-house or outsourced. Architectural design is most performed in-house, over 80% said so. There is also considerable level of digitalization in design practice, with 86% of designers offering 3D model walkthrough services and 70% offering BIM services. These were mainly done in-house. Further, nearly 80% of designers prepare as-built drawings. It was clear large-scale designers are more likely to outsource architectural design services than micro and small designers. Looking at the development application submission, we see that more than 73% of documents are submitted in digital format. CAD formats are used in some instances, but there are issues in capabilities of accepting drawings in CAD formats. With regards to IFC drawings, PDF still remains the main format of submission, and overall use of digital formats exceeds 90%. Whilst this is very positive, we cannot forget that PDF is just the start of this process of digitalization. Looking at formats for as-built drawing submission, we can see considerable lower levels of digital formats used as built drawings development. PDF still remains the most common format, with figures exceeding 35%. But most worrying is to see this red strip of bars on the left hand of this diagram. It indicates as-built drawings not being prepared at all. This is something that we need to consider. I think the legislation is going to resolve as well. The introduction of the Design and Building Practitioners Act 2020 is pivotal in making change in the sector. This, I think David also indicated how important it is and has been talking about it for some time. So we looked at how many people know about that. 60% of builders and 36% of designers hardly knew about it when we surveyed. 19% of builders have not heard about it. I'm sure these figures have improved since, with the positive and extensive work carried out by the Office of Building Commissioner. But it shows there is much more work to be done in this area. So looking at here, we examined the use of commonly used software for the design and as-built drawings preparations. AutoCAD, Revit, SketchUp, and ArchiCAD leads the pack. But there are many other software coming and coming up and becoming more popular in this space. Looking at software for document management and project management, Microsoft Project dominated with high use, followed by Aconex, Bluebeam, Procore, Billsoft, and Navisworks. There is a plethora of other software that are coming up, which we found, and the detailed report has that information. One of the most important things that we want to analyze was that how digitally mature are the construction sector organizations. We use the Chief Economist's digital maturity classification for this purpose, where we classify the sector into 4 stages as basic, advanced, smart, and transformative. These are the ones that are shown here and in the middle with the bars indicating the 4 levels. 52% of the sector currently are at basic level of digital maturity, which means at lowest level using minimal digital processes and technologies. A further 42% is promisingly at advanced level of digitalization, while 6% at smart level of digitalization. If the construction industry is to progress, we need to be rapidly digitalizing our construction processes. Towards the end of this presentation, I will be briefly introducing a skeletal framework for rapid digitalization. Here we can see that there is a move towards outsourcing IT services in the sector. This is entirely consistent with the dominant micro SME profile of the sector. The predominant basic level of digitalization we saw in the previous slide is further explained by the low levels of IT spend found in here in this diagram, especially see on the left, on the right, there is the low levels indicated in there. 51% of builders spending less than 1% on IT, and both designers and builders spend less than 3%. Now then, when we look at how they analyze how builders obtain quotations for subcontractors work, it was clear that they use very basic techniques. You can see it in this diagram here. A quarter use telephone calls. Further, 50% use internet just as a data source, not in an integrated manner. This again explains the basic level of digitalization that we were talking about, which came about in this survey. Looking at staff training and strategies, ad hoc approaches to training dominated. The sector is overtly concerned of delivering the sector is overtly concerned of delivering the day-to-day job of that they have to deliver. They put training and development in the back burner. The R&D spend of both designers and builders stand below 1%. This is indicative of a sector that is stagnating, not advancing at a pace it should. Compare this with high-performing sectors such as manufacturing that spend 10% or more on R&D activities. So we are at the lowest levels in that. Now, when we look at drivers and barriers, we looked at what motivated drivers drive digitalization, and the top 3 drivers coming out are greater accuracy and trustworthiness, improve quality and standards, deliver on time, budget, and quality. It is interesting to note that competitive advantage which used to dominate digitalization does not strike high, indicating a greater level of mainstreaming of digitalization. Digitalization is understood by the industry as important. Also, worth noting is that financial and other incentives did not dominate as well. So they were understanding its true use of it. The top three barriers were high cost of software, high cost of hardware, inadequate design. These are indicative of a culture of reluctance to pay for high quality services on one hand, and the comparatively high cost of software and hardware itself on the other hand. We then analyzed the feasible levels of digitalization that we can achieve. It was clear that 94% of the sector could achieve PDF drawings by 2022. 84 and 70% of respondents indicated that they have either already are using 2D CAD and 3D CAD respectively, or will achieve it by 2022. 50% indicated that they would predominantly use building information modeling by 2022, with 26% even indicating that they may use digital twin technologies. These are very promising developments and shows the sector's own recognition of value and need for digitalization. The report analyzes these in detail. Now, finally, we present the strategic framework for digitalization here of design and construction. It is a 4-stage model following the digital maturity levels we identified before. The process shows a strategy to achieve basic level of digitalization by 2022, advanced level of digitalization by 2025, and smart level of digitalization by 2030. Transformative level of digitalization going beyond 2030. So I think my time for this presentation is coming to an end. So this is simply was meant to be a quick run through. Full details can be found in the report. And I must acknowledge and thank you, my co-investigator, Associate Professor Sean Jin, and also Marini, Samaratunga, and Kasun, Gunasekara, who were the research assistants helping me in this project. Thank you very much. And yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Professor. We shall now take a few questions from the audience. Your questions will be answered by our panel comprising of the New South Wales Building Commissioner, Adjunct Professor David Chandler, OAM, the Director of the Office of the New South Wales Building Commissioner, Mr. Matt Press, the Chief Investigators of the Research, Professor Srinath Perera, and Associate Professor Xiao-Hua Jin, and co-authors, Ms. Marini Samaratunga and Mr. Kasun Gunasekara. We have the first question. I believe this could go to David Chandler. Most designers and buildings do not have very good understanding of the building codes. Should the designers be registered and accredited?
Well, the simple answer to that is that under the Designer Building Practitioners Act in New South Wales, they are required to be accredited. And so only people who are properly accredited and registered on the New South Wales licensing platform are able to upload documents into the e-planning portal. So that process started in New South Wales on the 1st of July.
Thank you. The next question is, builders will only do what clients ask them to do. How do you propose to influence clients to become more digital?
Is that directed at me?
I think yes, David.
Well, what we've done in New South Wales is that we've really made a major pivot in getting the industry to understand that developers at the end of the day are the people who make a contract with purchasers to deliver them a complete building, not in parts, a complete building. And so up until now, the focus has been on the little micro failures of all of the people in the supply chain, rather than bringing it all together at the top level and saying to developers, you make the decisions to hire the designers, you make the decisions to hire the constructors, and you make the decisions to hire the certifiers. So you can make good decisions and bad decisions. So I think that message is now being sheeted home, and the feedback that we're getting from industry at the moment is that there's been already a transformation in the way that developers and contractors are engaging. And I'm hearing very positive news from designers that in fact, they're now being engaged to do more wholesome and complete design than they've done in the past, and that the supply chain, the small and medium-sized enterprises, are being less exploited by the fact that they're not being forced to digest incomplete design and being forced to make it up for the lowest possible price. We've got work to do, but there are very positive green shoots out there right now.
Thank you. The next one is actually a comment. There are many difficulties for digital construction startups to work with potential clients. The Australian industry is not open to invest and value digital engineering services, and they are not open to work with new vendors. Please support and help startups.
I just want to make a comment there, because I get absolutely inundated by people who've got new technologies, new ideas, and new thinking. But it's terribly important for all of those people to reset what they're thinking their business offering is, because if we simply look at technology being little pieces that add to correct an industry that's been on a falling trajectory of capability for the last 20 or 30 years, these little band-aid pieces actually are not much good to us for the future. We are now turning the trajectory of this industry around such that it would be essential for people who are making new innovative software and capability to be understanding how they fit into an industry that's going in that direction, not that direction anymore. And quite often, what I ask of people who come to see me is, okay, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? How many other people are trying to solve that problem? And what's the problem look like measurably when it's solved? And almost no one has those answers. So I'd put it out there to people who are investing a lot of emotion and a lot of money in trying to create new solutions to really think through the clear answers, because they're the barriers for them to go and find investors to support the development of their capabilities.
Thank you. The next question would go out to Professor Srinath Perera. Through your findings, what do you think is the biggest incentive for builders to embrace technology?
Yes, the biggest incentive is basically that they can improve their efficiency and processes that they involve. The quality of work can be improved. We can make sure that the builders can make sure that their subcontractors are in good contact with them, make sure that there is good level of assurance coming out of it, and then the certification process can be improved. So there are many benefits coming out of that, mainly on performance improvement and efficiency.
Thank you. The next question also goes out to Professor Srinath. Is there a plan to mandate the BIM digitalization in the projects?
I think it is not much a question for me to answer. I think it is for the public sector. Many countries have done so. Perhaps that may happen here or not, but it's important to see that the industry is understanding its value. The report shows that industry is understanding that going through a digital process, adopting BIM, building information modeling, is an important factor for their own benefit. I think David can comment on that if it's appropriate.
Well, Srinath, it's a good segue because Minister Tudhope's still online, and I recall a very first conversation I had with the Minister when he said, David, what I want you to do is make sure you don't disenfranchise small to medium-sized businesses as you go on this journey of lifting the game of construction in New South Wales. So what we've always set out to do is to baseline our knowledge of where everybody is up on that journey, because quite often government really deal with what we call the apex players, and quite often policy and direction is shaped by the voice of the apex players. So this particular piece of work was to look beyond the apex. And Minister, maybe you might like to comment on that.
David, that's a very astute observation, is that this is the manner in which we've approached the amendments to the Act have been predicated on making sure that it catches the whole of the building industry and not just treating the apex. And as this report so adequately demonstrates, is that the majority of the small businesses who comprise the Class 2 building industry are small businesses, and it is having a focus on making sure that we have a product and a regulatory system which is able to be adapted to by small businesses, and a digitisation program which they are capable of affording is the real challenge of where business goes. But what I would say is that the way that you and the government have approached this is we want businesses to stay in business, but we don't want bad businesses to stay in business. And I think that's really where the focus of a lot of the legislation and a lot of the regulation has been aimed at is we need a digitisation program which identifies potentially those businesses which shouldn't be in the industry and which bring a bad name to all the other people in the industry. And the part of it's no longer just about the top end of the scale, it's about making sure that we have a consumer-focused product which enhances the reputation of the industry and doesn't, in fact, impact on those excellent small businesses that contribute so well to the economy of New South Wales.
Thank you. We can take one last question for David. How can the insurance industry contribute to this digitalization transformation, or vice versa?
Well, the good news is that the insurance industry is very deeply engaged in the work that we're doing. Yesterday, we provided a report to the financial sector on the importance of the digital work we're doing, particularly in building up what we call a trustworthiness index for the way buildings are certified and become resilient into their futures. The work that we have been doing from day one has been very focused on engaging with insurers to make sure that when we bring them back into the game, that they can look into an industry where they can actually see the risks better. And when you can see risk better, you can profile it. At the moment, risk is out of control. Insurers cannot see that risk. And they also support the fact that unless we do it in a digitally accessible way, then we're not going to turn this industry around. We had a very amazing meeting with insurers yesterday in a public forum, and I think it's showing you that this digital capability build down the entire ecosystem is a fundamental plank of delivering, as the Minister said, the confidence to consumers that their buildings are what they're buying.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions, everyone. I'd like to thank our panel for their answers. We shall share the answers to any questions we could not address today and a recording of today's event with all registered participants within the next week. I now welcome Associate Professor Xiao-Hua to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Respected Minister Anderson, respected Minister Tudor-Hope, Professor Chandler, Professor Glover, Professor Kaggioglu, Professor Perera, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the Centre for Smart Modern Construction to all the participants of this report launch event, organized by the Centre at the School of Engineering Design and Built Environment of Western Sydney University. I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to Minister Anderson and Minister Tudor-Hope for insightful addresses. Your presence today in this function has immensely enhanced its importance. We are extremely thankful to you, ministers. We are also deeply grateful to Professor Chandler for an enlightening address. His address was unique as always because of the novelty of ideas. We are also grateful to Professor Chandler for trusting us to deliver this research work and trust. Also, I would like to extend our special thanks to our Vice Chancellor, Professor Glover, and our Dean and Pro Vice Chancellor International, Professor Kagioglu, for inspiring addresses today and your continuous support to the Center. I wish to extend our gratitude to the staff at the Office of New South Wales Building Commissioners for their guidance and support. In particular, I wish to acknowledge the contributions of Matt, Yulendi, and Rebecca for your inputs throughout the project. We are sincerely grateful to all the designers and builders who responded to the survey. In particular, we acknowledge the great contributions from the Building Designers Association of Australia, the Australian Institute of Architects, the Association of Consulting Architects Australia, the Housing Industry Association, Engineers Australia, and the Master Builders Association. I also wish to thank all the 9 interview participants whom I cannot disclose due to our ethical obligations. They represented New South Wales designers, builders, and software service providers and provided valuable insights at the interviews. Thank you very much. I must not forget to thank the research team who dedicate their expertise and passion to this important piece of research work. Thank you, Srinath, for your leadership and dedication. Well done, Marini and Kasun, for your excellent assistance. My thanks are due to my colleagues who have worked with great dedication to make this event a great success. In particular, Sarah, Wendy, Mabel, Cheryl, Ed, Samuel, and Thelini. Thank you very much. Last but not least, again, I would like to thank over 500 participants around the world for joining us in this early morning and making this report launch a great success. Please take good care of yourself and your loved ones. Stay safe and keep well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We greatly appreciate your contribution in making this event a success. Thank you once again to our audience for your valuable presence. We hope our report gives you some valuable insights into the digitalization of construction and how the industry can prosper by increasing the level of digitalization. Stay safe and have a lovely day.